Our conversation today is going to center around Black joy as resistance and restoration. And so I'm honored to welcome the writer, dreamer, and creator of the Black Joy Project, Kleaver Cruz. Kleaver's work reminds us that Black joy is not just emotion, it's strategy, it's legacy, and sacred rebellion. This work also reminds us that Black joy is more than just a feeling, but has the potential to be a political act, a cultural inheritance, and a collective commitment. This space is grounded in celebration and reflection as we gather on Wiat land in Eureka, California. Um, and we're going to explore how Black joy lives inside us, how it travels between us, and how it carries us forward. Um, and yeah, so welcome.
Thank you. Buenos días, bon dia, bonjour.
So I'm going to read a quote and maybe we'll just go from there. We'll just kind of like have a volley of conversation.
Sure. Thank you for having me. That was a great intro. I might need to borrow that. Thank you.
I got you, friend.
Thank you.
Okay, so the quote is Black joy is a refusal to be erased. It is an act of protest against a world that too often only tells stories of our suffering. So, Kleaver, could you tell us a little bit of how you've come to define joy as protest and why you think this framework has resonated so deeply across Black communities worldwide?
Sure. The question makes me ask another question, and I love questions. The question is, what is the context of our joy wherever we exist? That to have protest means to be against something. And so the question is, what are we working against or moving against or shifting against? That, yeah, so I've understood joy as like it's a human thing. It's not just a Black thing. But when you add Black to that term, that experience, it shifts it to me significantly. In the book, I talk about how if joy was a shape, I see it as a circle. That's the community part, the collective part. And so the protest is about our wellness, our health. That the Black Joy Project started because I was feeling terrible and I just wanted to feel better. And then I learned in this journey that that is a collective goal, that even personal wellness is actually something that's most possible between people, not by ourselves, that we have to support each other to be well. It's not your singular responsibility to handle that. And so the protest piece is naming reality that we live in an anti-Black world, we live in a homophobic world, we live in a transphobic world, and that when we accept that reality, then the ways to push against it in part is to live our lives joyfully as much as possible and to conjure that between each other as much as possible. And I want to say we do this all the time, even if it's not conscious. That's
Right,
literally a part of our existence. This opportunity is just to give words to it.
right. And it reminds me too that getting rid of that like individualism is an act of dismantling white supremacy culture, right? And it's like it drives the individual and individualism so hard because, yeah, truthfully, just showing up in space with one another is absolutely like conquering all of the isms and
Mm.
the barriers they've put up. There was a podcast I was listening to, Trevor Noah,
Yeah.
who I'm like, where's he from? The Daily Show? I don't remember. But he would be speaking some really good truth on his podcast. But he was talking about how um, developed, the more developed a country, the more space there is between people, and how you
Mm.
start having to like purchase everything. Like he referenced, like, you know, you start to develop a country and there goes the village. And now I'm paying for childcare and I'm paying for someone to help me clean my house and I'm paying for someone to drive me somewhere. You know, like there starts to be this like
As opposed to the
transaction.
village. Yes.
Yeah, that starts pulling the village apart. So I like how you speak to that.
That makes
And
me think of I sometimes something I say a lot is imagination is free for us to access. And literally this morning for the first time, I was like, that kind of feels like capitalism to say it's free. like there's a price to it, as opposed to what
Right,
you're saying that it's just a given when we're in community in a certain way.
right, right. And I think we were talking about that yesterday too, that just showing up and being around people, or sometimes you're like, oh, I don't have the energy or the spoons to like be a person or to go hang out with people. And then you push yourself and you get there and you're like, actually, I feel really good.
Yeah, yeah. There's more.
Um, all right. So my next quote I pulled is to survive and thrive in systems built to dehumanize us requires a radical commitment to our own delight. And so
Mm.
I don't know if you can talk a little bit about um, basically like the launch of the Black Joy Project, like how you got folks together to put it together, and maybe even some surprises along the way that you encountered.
Sure. The project started in 2015, towards the end of it. The long and short of that is that there was a moment towards the end of 2015 that I woke up feeling terrible, like probably the worst I had felt in my life to that point. And it was just this moment of having to make sense of why was I feeling that way. And
Mm-hmm.
that led to a very spiritual experience that literally, like, it felt like the words black and joy were floating above my little corner room apartment in the Bronx. And yeah, and so that led to remembering this picture of my mom that I had taken. And then I decided to put that on Facebook with this stream of consciousness, essentially like a call to action saying, um, well, before I say that, just the quick reminder that 2015 is a year after Mike Brown Jr. was killed. This is like a couple months after Sandra Bland was found murdered, or dead, I should say, in her jail cell in Texas. A lot of these things were happening. And so I'm saying all that to say that it was also the rise of this hyper visibility. Like 10 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, it was not this normal to go on the internet and constantly be bombarded with videos of all kinds of violence and stuff. That yeah, that was the beginning of this. What I thought was important, we needed it. My call to action was saying that like the yes and that yes, that is important. And I was feeling this sense of we need to make space for joy in a real way, and that for my own personal sake, I wasn't gonna make it if I didn't focus
Right.
on that. Or if that wasn't my contribution to this conversation. And so that led to posting pictures of people around me and then just started snowballing. And now, over the last 10 years, it's been really amazing opportunities to speak to people on all kinds of scales in many different places, from formal things like conferences to literally like bumping into people on the street, just
I
talking.
know, at the Black Joy Parade. Imagine
Literally,
that.
oh, that's right. At the Black Joy Parade. Um, to, just having these moments of sharing what does Black joy mean, and that not all of those conversations were strictly about joy. Like when I went to South Africa, I interviewed someone and he spoke to me for almost 2 hours about being depressed and
Mm-hmm.
the place he was in his life. And that felt important too, that the Black Joy Project has a few things. One, it's always been organic. So it's been many, many things, radio shows, gallery shows, photo booths. It's been a bunch of different things. But a part of it too is that in the amplifying of our joy, it was never to disconnect or detract from the things that don't bring us joy. That it's felt the more time passes, the more it feels important to address those things as a way for us to genuinely experience joy. And that, yeah, because we're in a moment now that Black joy is in the zeitgeist, is very much a part of popular culture.
Right.
But often it feels very one-dimensional. And this
Right.
it feels like this insistence of you gotta smile. And it's like, girl, we don't want to smile all the time. I don't have the motivation to smile right now. But that doesn't mean I'm not experiencing joy per se or something joyful. And yeah, that's disingenuous to separate those two things because we're always experiencing life complexly, not one thing at a time.
Right. And I'm like, you never know happiness if you never know sadness, right? Or you don't know how good your body feels if you've never had an ache in your back. Like,
Exactly.
so I think
Exactly.
I like how you said earlier too, like joy's a circle.
Yes.
And it's because, we're complex beings and I need all of my emotions to also experience that joy. Um,
Yes,
and I also agree with you that in the last 10 years, the internet has changed so drastically that we do need these little pockets of things that detach us from, the trauma porn that's just dumped
exactly.
through social media and videos and, you know, the fast media that exists in our world right now.
Even yesterday, right? Juneteenth is such a good example of what we're talking about, that Black people came together and decided we're going to celebrate this thing that is really important and was delayed, the message of it. But that once we got word of it, it was something to celebrate, even in the midst of a major transition that it wasn't like slavery got abolished and then everybody was good the next day.
I know. They were like, yay.
Exactly. So that is really significant that that celebration was happening for a period of time. It still is, but I'm saying those first years of it was still in the middle of figuring out what is our place now in the society and how do we thrive here. And feeling the importance to have joy though, to celebrate that the choice wasn't keep your head down the entire way through. It was we need to acknowledge this really big thing that we're experiencing.
Yeah. And I think we're, as Black folk, given that gift of having a lineage that's been through so much that, we're able to find joy, even if it's like, oh, I had me a little sweet treat at my
Yeah,
desk at work today. Like,
that does matter.
I think that, being people of perseverance through lineage is really why a lot of us center on that finding joy and why we so easily find joy. I feel
Yeah.
like, um, I mean, it's kind of easy when your culture is like music, food, gathering, like,
It's the culture.
yeah, that's the culture, right? That we just get together and have a good time. And so,
True.
um,
And what
I
you
do,
were saying, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Well, what you were saying about Trevor Noah's quote made me think too about in different terms of like developed as in further into capitalism and those types of things and how that separates us. Whereas what I've seen is in some of the quote unquote least developed parts of the world, it's actually where some of the most profound joy exists. That's the
Exactly.
people who don't got shit, are making literally $1 a month or whatever a week. That those are the people that are figuring out how to come together and share and still have a good time on the week. Like I was just in Brazil a couple months ago, and right now there's a lot of organizing around shifting the work week because the average
Mm.
person is working like 6 days a week, multiple jobs. And if you're living in a city like Sao Paulo, you're traveling, like your transit is at least 90 minutes one way every day. So we're talking about like 3 hours of the day is traveling. And we're
And
not
then you're
talking about
working
if you
for
have
what, 8
kids.
to 9 hours?
Literally, and we're not talking about if you have kids that you have to pick up or any of that stuff. That and then when we associate Brazil, it's literally always joyful people. When you think
Right.
when the popular notion of Brazil is carnival and blah blah blah, these people are working very hard, like literally the intense amounts of
Right. Because
labor.
I think of like samba parades,
Exactly.
carnival, beautiful Black people in bikinis on the beach. Like,
Because part of that is like we got one day off this week, literally one day. We're gonna make the best of it.
right,
You know what
right.
I mean? That it's
Man.
that type of stuff. That's the biggest population of Black people outside of Africa, and it's some of the worst. Like the level of violence systemically against Black people, if you can believe, is exponentially worse than the U.S. Like it literally is worse. But that's not what we associate to that culture, is what I'm saying, and that's powerful.
Right.
That even what cuts through that is a whole group of people's joy.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. Um, Dang, that made me think of something, but now I forgot it.
I want to give
Oh,
a shout out
the
to.
colorism of Brazil is also wild.
We
Like,
could get into that too.
so wild. Yeah, I'm like, that's a different
It is
series, talk show.
because
Um,
it's real.
but in the book, it spoke a little bit about how when you're experiencing joy, that you're like not carrying the baggage of all the things that have happened to you. And I really loved that because I think also if we talk about our lineage of Black people, like there's so much trauma ingrained in our DNA, right?
Mhm.
And there's so much trauma inflicted on us that's also ingrained in non-Black people's DNA, right? Like anti-Blackness is a global phenomenon. And it talked about that site of return of like me being my whole self outside of all the shit I've been through when I'm in my moment of joy. Um, and I just really love that so deep. And I wonder too, you spoke a little bit like this project started because I was not feeling good. And it's like,
Yeah.
was my worst, but like, how has your personal relationship with joy kind of changed over time? Or, you know,
Mhm.
how has maybe working on this project reframed your own joy for yourself?
That's a good question. It really has given me a deeper empathy for people in general. Of what you said, of just having a lot of conversations, and some of the ones like the one I mentioned earlier, that we're carrying a lot, that there's a way to talk about systemic things and forget about the person, like the interpersonal things that are happening, that yes, we know all these things are happening, but like somebody's going through a breakup, or you just got fired from your job, and all of these other parts of your reality that um is real, is not, you're not thinking abstractly about what does it mean systemically. Um that yeah, so now my relationship to joy is not a forced thing, that I really have learned. Part of my ability to be in that is to also be with the things that don't bring me joy. uh,
Right,
to be with, like, if I'm sad, that's okay, like, be sad. And not this like toxic positivity that we or optimism that can happen as well, that in the desire to avoid or not, like, nobody, it's not enjoyable to be in trauma and things, but
right,
sometimes we lean too far in the other direction of, now we just have to be happy all the time, and that's not real either. Because then that moment comes where the lights are off and you're sitting by yourself, and then it all hits you.
right,
Opposed to, like, you could, like we were saying earlier, we could do that together. You don't have to carry all of that by yourself. Because more than likely you're not the only person experiencing that. Yeah, it's really complicated, my relationship to emotions, but in terms of joy, to give space for the complexity of that. And the other one too, because you used the word lineage a few times, is remembering that the first humans, despite the language, let's use today's language, but the first humans were Black,
right,
which means that, and we could even be more specific and say African, but the reason I say that is to say that means joy has literally been there since the beginning of this species that we're in, that we've been denied access to. That's really deep, that we can pull that far back, that our connection to Black joy is not as, it's much deeper than than 15 whatever, that we existed way, 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 way before
right,
people in Europe decided to wreak havoc on the world. And to me, that's exciting, because it gives more, there's a well that's deeper than that. That is literally to the beginning. If we could do a meditation and connect to the first humans to make sense of, even back then when they're running from pterodactyls and in caves
not
and whatever.
pterodactyls.
But you know what I mean? That's like, they
That
are like,
Mesopotamia.
you know what I'm saying? Like, they're scraping flint together to start a fire, and
Right,
there was still room where, like, there was babies being had, and all these things were happening, that there was joy there too. That's very powerful. It's funny to say, but it's a real thing of, like, can we imagine that those first
right.
people were also having joy, and that's a long line that we can connect to. Like what Maya Angelou always used to say about, when she stepped into a room, she understood she was walking with thousands behind her. That
Hmm.
we have that too, that our ancestors go all the way back to the beginning. And I don't, well, as a humans, we can say that, but I'm saying particularly as Black people, that's powerful. That we're the group of people that can say we can trace our thing to the very beginning.
Right.
People
And
that
that
look like us.
contentment, right? Like if you're thinking about, you know, before we were like socialized and we were more animalistic, like that contentment was joy, right? Like
Yeah.
we found a safe cave to be in. We filled our
Literally,
belly with berries. We most likely had song and dance, like, you
yes.
know, so I'm like that contentment, I think I also for myself find myself uh labeling that as joy, right? Like
Yes.
where I often think of like where I was and where I am today. And like I have children now and they live a completely different life than I lived. And, trauma and abuse does not rear its
Exist.
head in their life as much as it did for mine. So even that alone, I'm like, wow, this safety that I've created to feel contentment is like the way I access joy a lot of the time. And I know too, even like us being here talking about emotions, like it's not likely that you would even find the generation above us
Right.
gathering to do the same thing, right? So it's
Right.
like,
And I'm an
uh,
Aquarius. We don't have feelings.
I know, right. You're the 14th. I'll
Yeah.
never forget that.
Oh, I
Oh,
was gonna say too that when I like synthesized all of these like hundreds of responses to that question about what does Black joy mean to you, what it felt like it came down to was essentially being fully self-expressed without being told what to do or hindered. And safety is why I thought of it, is that we're able to safely exist in that way.
right,
That's a powerful thing, that essentially joy, Black joy is just being, having the room to be yourself. And that the to your question, that's also taught me we have to then have an expansiveness to understand that as many Black people exist, there's that many ways to define Black joy, but also Blackness.
right,
That we also don't always get that room, especially as two queer people talking in this conversation, that the queer Black people are part of the marginalized within the margins,
right,
um, and that we often are told we're not the thing, or you don't get to define the thing. You're
right.
outside of the thing.
I mean, we've had like even the conversations we've had, like, so Black Humboldt exists. There's only 2% Black population where we are. We're
Shout
super
out to y'all.
rural, we're super spread out. And I mean, there's not large percentages in other areas, but there's like 6 times as many people. So it's like, the numbers are different, but, and we've been so intentional about having exclusive spaces so folks can just exist
Hmm.
outside of a monolith, outside of expectations. And we've had to do so much education. Like, we prioritized some pride elements to our Juneteenth festival. We do it every year, but the first year we did it, we had Black folks like in our inboxes being like, what does that have to do with being Black?
Love
And
that.
it's like, wow, like, do you not know one queer Black
Sincerely
person?
though,
Or
apparently no.
like, you ever heard of the Stonewall riot? Like, obviously not, but
Right.
it was like a very aha moment, and not by design, but by just who's in our circle. Like 95% of our builders are also queer. So all of us were very much having that moment of, oh, even the people we take care of, like, don't fully see us in all of our dimensions.
Literally.
And you mentioned too, just a lot about the ancestral line and how, there was joy with those first people. And you bring that up in the book too, that like, this is the blueprint. Like, we don't carry our joy alone. Like, we pass it, we gift it, we protect it. And, it's something that we, between Black folks, exchange, right? Like, showing up for each other in different ways. And or even when you just walking down the street and you go, okay, Reg, sir, okay,
Exactly.
and like those moments of seeing each other is like that exchange. And just hearing you talk about like the first ancestor made me think of that part of
Mm.
kind of, or I'm like, my little Black joy gift box that I hand out
Yeah.
because I'm telling all my people they look good. Or
Yeah.
I always say, my oldest son is about to be 12, and maybe
What?
like 4 or 5 years ago, we were walking and I saw a Black man. So I said, "What up, brother?" And he was like, "That is not your brother." And I was like, "Oh no, like, you just say hi to every
Right.
Black person." Like,
The
and
nod.
he's like, and he's like more fair skinned. So he's like, "Well, what if they don't know I'm Black?" And I was like, "If you say hi, they will know."
Right,
Like,
right, right.
it's
The
like a
nod.
code,
Yeah.
unspoken rules of the Black community. But just like those little items that, we were gifted from the
Yes.
generations above us and have solidified, even like growing up on the East Coast and now living on the West Coast, and, growing up when the internet wasn't really a thing, but so many things are the same
Right,
that I'm
right.
like, wow, we really are like a one big village of people who have like similar expectations of each other and similar ways to like show up and hold each other, which I'm like, this book is also like a testament to that. I also think it's
Mhm.
funny that it started with a Facebook post because
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, but one of Wendy's like most impactful pieces also started as a
On Facebook?
Facebook post. Like
Wow.
or they were just frustrated with white folks and they wrote us a Facebook post that was like, if, thinking back to the show, Dear White People, they were like,
Yikes.
they were like, if you could write something to white people, like put it in these comments. And it was the same thing, like lists and lists of things, people being like, Dear White People, let me read you real
Ooh.
quick. And they made it into like a literary piece. And so I'm like, I
Wow.
just love that you were like, I'm not the only person
No,
doing this. So let me like tap in with my community or tap in with my village to see like what other people are saying.
exactly. I also wanted to say, because you brought it up earlier about your experience of having to do a little more focus on pride things during this part of the year, that something this project also made me see more clearly was the importance and the centering, so to speak, of what I said earlier about the people who are marginalized within Black communities, that we actually get to be witnessed and
Mm-hmm.
listened to and supported because, again, this cause evidence and the people who are in that room with you is who always shows up for these things. Almost all, you could definitely count Black women to come to show up, that who always shows up is Black women, Black queer folks. It's those of us that are most marginalized that always end up having to fight for everyone, even though everyone's not fighting for us
Yeah.
explicitly. That the book part of it started unintentionally, and then through the editorial process, it became a conscious thing of, if you look through the book, there is a skew towards that. There is a lens of and that I had to understand that that's because before writing the book, the people that I learned or experienced Black joy with most profoundly was Black women and Black queer folks. That
Yeah.
it felt important that that be reflected and that not to change that, because I just spent a year now, like going on a year and a half of touring and traveling with this book, and without I don't even have to count the numbers, that with certainty the majority of the people that have come to those events is the people I just named.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean when people get to witness our joy and listen to the ways that we navigate the world? Because we're the ones that are going to shift these things. It's not going to be the intersections that already have all of this power. It's us. We're the ones that are going to shift that. And it has to be okay, more than okay, for us to be asked, what does joy mean to you? How do we cultivate that with you, for you? How do we call it forward when you're not experiencing it? Because often history has shown us that we can get drowned in this, it's for everybody, and then everybody don't mean everybody.
Right. 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 Because we know that firsthand. And yeah, and it's interesting you say that too, because it is true. Black women are showing up, right?
Always,
The girls and the dolls are showing up, like, and we
always.
always have been. And I think it's because, like you had mentioned too, like we have experienced the other side of joy. And so if we're able to like create that with other kinfolk, like that's the mission, right? And Black Humble also, not by design, has mainly been stewarded by Black women. And, we've had that criticism of like, oh, is this a women's group? And it's like, no,
Oh
but
well,
Black women show up and get it done. Like,
they do.
you know, and these are the people here for a reason, not, not by design, like I said, but very much so the folks who show up are the ones
Always.
who end up leading, um, so we have one more question just because I know we maybe wanted to do the meditation.
Oh, sure. Let me look that up. But while you're asking, I'll look it up.
Yeah, I'm like, I guess just something else that really resonated with me is this idea that joy is like not a destination, but
Yes.
it's like the path. It's like
That-
as we are moving, it is what's happening. And so maybe just some words of how we reclaim joy, and reconnecting with that power. It almost seems like both spiritual, but I keep thinking of just like therapy too, like something
that-
that Black folks, excuse me, I think still there's a lot of Black folks that are like, oh, I don't need that. I don't need to learn how to talk. I don't need to learn how to process my emotions. But that's what keeps like popping up in my head as we've been talking, because I feel like a lot of this is that self-discovery and exploration of like, how do I feel? Like, what do I want? What is authentic to me? And, even trying to think for myself, like, when are the moments I find the most joy? And, a lot of it is like when I'm doing nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, kind of disconnecting what we think joy means. Um, and yeah, getting back to that, maybe, what you might say to someone that's like, oh, I don't even know how to start this journey of
Mm.
reclaiming my joy or my power to access joy.
Ooh, I like that question. It makes me think of something I also have learned, not just through this work, but just generally around organizing and things, is we have to be committed to the mission and not the vehicle. And I say that to say
Mm,
like one obvious example is, if we go through history in the 50s and 60s, there was a civil rights movement, and then that turned into the Black Power movement and so on. Then we had Black Lives Matter, then the movement for Black, you know what I'm saying? But the through line is Black liberation.
right.
The
And there's been
vehicle
all
kept
these
changing.
different
Yeah.
vehicles, right?
And what happens if people are like, oh, the civil rights movement is over, I'm good. You know what I mean? Then that's not a commitment. That was a commitment to the civil rights movement, not to Black liberation. That
Right,
makes sense.
right,
So I'm saying that to say that joy is just a term. And first of all, it's a term in English. So we have to make room for Black people to speak literally thousands of languages and can express themselves in those ways. And so um, one is one way I'm thinking about answering that question is, if you're feeling like that, part of it is don't feel like you have to define it in those terms because you're
right,
probably experiencing that thing or creating it anyways. The opportunity when you have the language is to do it more consciously. So yeah, and it's what we keep saying too, is if you're not feeling it, that's okay.
right,
Like,
right,
don't force it. Don't force it. Don't cover it up or feel like you have to mask it um in order to be with the group or the trend or whatever. That it's okay if you're not experiencing it. And the other thing too is I would also invite them to sit with if at all, what comes to mind when you hear that word. Because usually talking about joy feels like when you talk to somebody about the things that make you laugh, and then people end up laughing by the end of that conversation. That usually in these types of conversations, people leave feeling that type of joy, or at least like a memory of it, of "Oh,
right.
I have felt that thing before." But yeah, that one, it's okay if you're not feeling it. Two is make it up. One of my favorite things is making things up. So if it's not called joy to you, call it something else. Or
Right,
whatever you've understood it to be, let it be that thing. The power, of course, is if you can link it to, yeah, this is part of this bigger conversation. But I'm not of the team to force people into a frame of like, this is what it is, and you need to understand it this way. Because that would be contradictory to what we were talking about earlier. There's that as many Black people exist, there's that many ways to define our Blackness, but also
right, right.
how we understand the world. Um, that yeah, I would leave room for that.
Yeah. And I mean, like, same thing. Like, if someone says joy, and you immediately think, like, okay, that means I'm like big mouth laughing and like, you know, that's the display. But it really does like come in so many shapes, forms.
It really does.
And really, yeah, I think it depends on the person, the time of year, how
Yeah.
I'm feeling, how much sleep I got, whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Joy
Well,
was me hitting my head on that pillow last night after a very long travel. That was joy.
yeah. I know. Sometimes when I get in my bed post shower at the time I want, I'd be like, yes, so
Yes. You
happy.
know what I
Like,
mean?
she did it.
The cocoa butter is
Um,
on.
yeah. Or like yesterday, we were lifting things and using our bodies, and in the moment, I was like, ugh. But then last night, at the end of the day, I was like, it like feels so good to be sore. Like, like obviously I'm not sore to the point that I'm like uncomfortable, but it did bring me some joy to like know I used my body all day, and I could literally like feel it as I got into bed and everything started to rest.
Yeah.
Um, And I know I'm like, I'm about to like make that a thing for me for
Yeah.
when I feel like I do like the bodily check in all the time, but it's still very much black and white. And I think thinking in terms of like spectrum
Yes.
with everything, really, I think that also helps us to get back to that circle. I love that
Me too.
image.
Me too.
Um, okay, so do we want to do the meditation? And
Sure.
that's it.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna set it
Okay.
up by saying that this meditation is part of a four-part series that I co-created with an organization, a company called Madrona Meditation. And their philosophy, part of it is they want to create meditation or spaces that is not it's not that like close your eyes and that type of thing, that it's trauma informed. The person I worked with to create these meditations is a therapist in training. And so we spent a lot of time talking about how do you create meditations that are conscious of people that when you tell them to close their eyes or be with their thoughts, that's actually an overwhelming invitation, or it can be
Yeah,
very triggering to ask
I'm
somebody.
like me
Right.
because I'm
You
not
know,
doing what you're saying. The minute I close my eyes, I'm somewhere else, like in a
exactly.
different world.
Because the mind be minding.
Exactly. I'd be like, oh, remember that time when you were 8 years old and you
That's me too. I
like
got three
literally.
seconds. Yeah, so I just want to say that the design of it is the intention was to be expansive in what you're being asked to do or invited to do. And
Okay.
y'all can find these on the Madrona platform. I can send you the link. It's an app now.
Okay. Oh, right. You
Um,
were talking about that last time we
yeah,
talked.
it's an app now, and there's two versions. I'm gonna do the micro. There's like an extended version, and then there's a micro hit for when we don't have that much time. So I want to practice that too. Of the thing we're talking, I feel like we've been talking about that as well, is that sometimes it may feel like I don't have time for joy or myself. And so there's a version that should only take about like 5 or 10 minutes to be an example of you can, even if you only have 5 minutes, that's enough
Right.
time to give something to yourself. And so this one specifically is called Piece of Joy. And so it's an exercise that by the end of it, you'll be able to associate a physical object or sound to your joy, so that in the moments that you're not experiencing it, you can have something, a tool to attempt to call it forward. And for me, the background story of that is um, a few years ago, I went to St. Louis to this butterfly conservatory. Those are awesome. And by the end of it, I found in the gift shop, I found this little stone that said joy on it, and I was doing these like card work and like meditation, and I came to this prompt. And so I started associating it with the stone, where I would say I transform fear into love and I transform love into joy whenever I would feel super anxious, or like that moment where your body's like super tense.
Right.
And so yeah, and so then that led me to think of maybe more people could benefit from something like this. So yeah, this is a way to build on this experience I had of trying to create a tool for when I was feeling anxious or not joyful.
Right. Love that.
Yeah, so here we go.
All right.
So yeah, of
I'm
course,
gonna sign
find
up.
it. I'll just read through it. If you're having a hard time today, or maybe it's been that kind of day, or week, or month, or year, this brief exercise could be a way for you to connect with joy in this moment. And life be lifing, so maybe you only have a few minutes to step away from all that is required of you today. Thank you for taking some time for you. Let's begin. First, get yourself in a comfortable and relaxed position. It can be laying down, sitting in a chair, or on a cushion. Any position that brings you the most comfort. Next, if you feel comfortable, please close your eyes. This is a moment where if your shoulders are tense, your jaw is clenched, or any other ways anxiety can show up in our bodies, you can begin to relax. Allow yourself to land slowly and softly. Now, imagine the words black joy or joy. What comes up immediately? Is it a feeling in your body, a memory, a smell, a sound? a song, an image. Let whatever came up fade away. Now, I'd like you to take a deep breath on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. One more time. 1, 2, 3. And one last time. 1, 2, 3. Let's take a beat to think about a moment or moments where joy felt absent. Maybe it was a moment of anxiousness, as I mentioned earlier, or a scary moment where you weren't sure of a decision to make or what to do next in a difficult situation. Maybe you were cranky or in a funk for whatever reason. Maybe it was a conflict that was overwhelming. What did that feel like? Could you sense it in your body at all? What sort of thoughts did you have at that time? How did it feel in your spirit? Complete the following phrase. I transform blank into joy. I'll repeat that. Complete the following phrase in your mind, of course, or in a soft whisper. I transform blank into joy. Now I want you to look around the space you are in. Look through your pockets if you have any, or the bag that you typically carry with you, or listen for a sound that is catching your attention, like the hum of a fridge or the spinning blades in a fan. What you're searching for is an object or sound that is small enough to fit in a pocket or bag that brings you comfort. For me, it was that small, smooth, reddish-brown stone. For you, it might be a paperclip, a ring, an earring, the rhythm of your breath, a button. The possibilities are endless. Whatever you choose will be your piece of joy moving forward. Take the time to think carefully about this item of your choice. And of course, you're always welcome to change your mind about it at any time. This is your life to live. These are simply suggestions. Now, if you're comfortable, please close your eyes again. Let's take 3 deep breaths, starting with the first. 1, 2, 3. And again, 1, 2, 3. One last time. 1, 2, 3. Let's revisit that phrase you started sketching earlier. I transform blank into joy. Imagine that blank as the thing keeping you from joy, or feels like what may be opposing it. Now, this object you've chosen is a tool to work through that, or maybe get past it altogether. Remember that joy is not the opposite of grief and pain. It's the experience to help you get through it. It's the repellent, if not at the very least, a balm. As you present yourself to the object, in whatever ways feel most comfortable, I want you to see the phrase in your mind again. I transform blank into joy. Now, complete the phrase again. Repeat it 3 more times. I transform blank into joy. I transform blank into joy. I transform blank into joy. please open your eyes again. Please put the object, if it's physical, in a safe place. If it's a sound, give yourself a cue so that you can recall it later. That can be taking a deep breath or putting it in your pocket, in a purse or pocketbook, in the fold of a hat, or inside of one. It's completely up to you. Again, this is your life. This practice is simply a guide. Congratulations. You've now created a piece of joy for yourself.
Yes, thank you.
You're so
I
welcome.
love that you do the item, or I'm glad that you had that experience in the museum you were speaking to. I do like somatic workshops, and there's usually a lot of topics of race and whiteness, and so we tell folks to like bring an item that will help
Mm,
you like ground yourself.
oh my gosh.
And so I just love hearing that, other folks do that. And it was something like talked to me through my facilitators. And in the moment I was like, okay, y'all, like whatever. And through practice, I've been like, actually, I love my comfort items.
Yes, that's really cool. That's really
Yeah. So thank you for doing that. I'm like, I have a little closing in my script. I closed it because I was
cool.
vibing.
Fun story, I lost the stone, but this is mine now. It's this ring.
See, like that makes sense. And as you were saying that, like maybe it fits into your hat or something, I was like, wow, like having something on my hands would be nice.
Mhm.
I also like, there's like this on your left hand right here. It like attaches to your polyvagal nerve.
Ooh,
So I be tapping it. So I'm like, if you
ooh,
ever
see,
see
I
me
like that.
somewhere and I'm out here tapping, just know I'm unregulated.
Noted.
All right. Well, I'm going to close us out. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
I'm
you.
like, let's see if I can think of one more quote or something that I liked.
Okay.
I think we talked about most of them that
Can I say something then on the way out?
of
Is
course.
um the big underlying thing under all of this journey for me was spirit. It was listening to that little, I don't want to say voice because it's not a voice for everyone, but just that thing, that feeling, that guiding sensation that sometimes is scary because you don't know where it's going to go. And I always tell people in these spaces when I get invited to them is to listen to that, to trust it, to have faith in it, because again, this all started because I was feeling terrible. And then I had this moment where I had to decide, am I going to listen to spirit, even though I don't know what's going on? And it's not this immediate solution or resolution for me. And that by listening to that, it really led me down this powerful rabbit hole that in the end ended up bringing together a lot of the things that I believe in, that it became an opportunity to stand for international Black solidarity. How
Hmm.
do we make connections as Black people around the world and not just in the West or the US specifically? How do we keep complicating what we understand to be Black? And that every time I meet somebody that's different from me is exciting because that reminds me that there's another way to be. There's another way to be. This is how I'm being, but you being different, that is
Right.
great because
We can be together still. And
exactly.
I'll be
And I
me and
love
you be
that.
you. And it will be great.
So yeah, I just want to say that of if you ever feel like that pang in your stomach or that little floating in your chest is to trust it. And sometimes especially when it's scary in the sense of unknown, that is worth it because you don't know what's on the other side, but it probably will be something powerful and profoundly beyond whatever you can imagine. And that if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be here on the screen with you. We'd still be
Right.
friends, but I wouldn't be here in this screen with you. That yeah, it's just there's a lot of unimaginable things, and that because of the terrible world we live in, that it doesn't always feel like that. That's often our imagination is to imagine terrible outcomes and things.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
and I like that idea of trust, because I think that's also tied to how you experience joy, right? Like getting outside of the box of what that means and really listening to what your intuition wants and recognizing what it feels like in your body. And I do think that's also a skill that Black folks are learning with the
Yeah,
newer generations of like what things feel like in my body. Like when my chest gets hot, what does that mean? Or like
exactly.
you mentioned, the feeling in your gut. I feel like a lot of us have not even learned how to be bodily in
Exactly. Because they're
tune.
busy
And so,
surviving.
right, right. We've just been surviving. And it's like now we get this opportunity to like peel back the layers of emotion and the way things feel in my body, the way things show up for me in my body. And so I really enjoy that you mentioned that and encourage folks to continue
Yes.
always being like, wait, did that feel weird in my body? Why did
Exactly.
it? And even if
Yeah.
you don't know the why, right?
Right.
Following and listening to spirit. I like the way you put it.
Yes. And we
Um,
don't all have the same work to do. It's not, we don't
exactly,
all have the same work to
exactly.
do. So it's
Or I
okay to,
always think too, like, we can fight for Black liberation, we can organize, we can protest, but if we don't know how to be with each other, none of it even matters.
it
Like,
doesn't, it
if we don't
doesn't.
know how to be with each other, take care of each other, care for each other, make space for authenticity to show up in all the different ways, like, those protests don't matter. Like,
I think so
the,
too.
the revolution will not matter if there's
Because we won't
no,
revolutionize nothing.
right, right. We'll just be regurgitating.
Literally. Oh my gosh, we could talk for hours.
Uh, I know. I'm like, I'm gonna have to come. Oh no, you said, well, let me not put your location in the recording, but you, I'm like, you live somewhere else, not New York
Well,
anymore.
I'm saying hey from Denver right now, so I'm not that far from you.
Oh, right, right, right. Okay, so you are doing all the things. I love
Yeah.
that. They were
Yes.
like, I'm booked and busy, but I will be in the Zoom.
Of course.
Love it. Well, thank you for sharing your time and your practice and your wisdom. We are raffling off a Black Joy project book at the
Oh my
Juneteenth
God.
event. So there are
Yeah.
a few local people in the Zoom watching. So if you want the book, you might win it, or just go
Hey.
on the internet and buy
Yes.
it. You will
Really
not
easy.
be.
Oh, good.
I was gonna say you will not be disappointed, and you can reread it. I read it all the time. I love it.
Oh
It's
my
like
God.
pieces. Yeah. And
I mean so much. Just a quick recap of the book is it's a series of essays that touch on different principles within Black Joy, but there's also three pieces that were commissioned from writers outside of the US to talk about their experiences of Black Joy and the context of their lives. So one of them is a Rwandan artist that lives and grew up in the Netherlands. So she's talking about her experience of being Black in Europe, and particularly being a dark-skinned Black woman in Europe
right
and
in
just
the
traveling,
Netherlands.
right? And then there's a queer, um, they're not a lawyer because it's a different legal system, but for US audiences, let's simplify as a lawyer. And a literary podcast host that talks about what does Black queer joy look like in South Africa, where they're from. There's a Zimbabwean poet who has been living in Australia for a little over 10 years, and so she wrote a poem about her relationship as a Black African woman to Indigenous Black people in Australia. And then there's over 50 artists from around the world that have contributed their art to the book. And so there's a whole visual conversation that's happening too. So if you love images, it's there and it's in almost every kind of medium. There's collages, paintings, photographs, digital work. Um, yeah, it's an
Yeah.
experience. It's
It
an
reminds me
experience.
of a scrapbook almost. Like I feel like when I first read it, well, originally I was like, oh, I'm getting this. This is my friend. Like, give me this. And so I didn't even know what it was. I mean, I know what Black Joy is, right? And we love that. And you're a profound person. And so I
Oh,
was like, oh, I value this. But then when I got it, I was like, oh, this is like a peek into so many different experiences. It's so easy to read too in that medium because I
mhm.
know we're tired. Life be life. And like
Yeah.
you said, it's really hard to get entrenched in like a deep novel. But this was it's so light and
Mm.
refreshing. And yeah, it reminds me so much of a scrapbook. I felt like I
Thank
was,
you.
like in it with all these people and it
Thank
also
you.
speaks to exactly what we've been talking about, right? Like you can't do
Yeah.
it alone. You need the village and um
Many hands were a part of this, and um, the other thing I'll say too is if you have a library, if you have a library, go to it and it's probably there. If you have the Libby app, that's a great way to access the book too if you don't have the coins right now to buy a book. There's an audio book if that is something that you need. It's not my voice, it's a really awesome actress that voices the book, so that's a different experience as well. And if you really don't got time for none of that, you can always go to blackjoy.org where there's resources to get to the book, but also a whole resource guide of other things to look into that extend into this world of Black joy because I'm interested in being in a landscape and not the definition of Black joy. So there's many what I call the Black joy workers or the constellation of us is all over the place.
Wow, I love
Your
that.
friend right here on screen is one of those people that yeah, there's a lot of us and that's important to understand too, that there's many windows and entry points and the resource guide is just scratching the surface of other places you can look to and read and watch and support people that are doing this work.
Perfect. I love that. That's really cool. Yeah, and I'm like, Black Humboldt started as just convening Black folks together, with the idea of unmasking. Like, there's just so many white folks here that we are constantly wearing a mask. And so we were like, oh, let's just gather folks, exclusive space, no agenda. Like, there's nothing. There's food, there's music, we're hanging out. And so a lot of people are like, is Black Humboldt a Black joy organization?
I
And
think so.
we're like, yes, right? We're all the things, but
Yes.
that is something often that folks associate with us. And so
I love that.
I love that too.
Me too.
Um, all right. Well, thanks so much, friend. Everyone check out the things.
Yes,
And
blackjoy.org.
yeah, blackjoy.org. And yeah, thanks for joining us. And
Thank
you have
you.
fun in Denver.
You too. Have
Is
fun,
it warm
everyone.
there? It has to be warm there.
Maybe it's like 100 plus right now.
In Denver?
Yeah.
Lord of mercy. Well, good luck. Te
I
amo mucho.
enjoy your Friday.
Thank you. You too.